Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is renovate. Let's take a moment and talk about how we use this verb. The verb renovate really has only one meaning, and that is to restore something that is old and get it back into a good condition or a better condition. This verb is most commonly used to talk about buildings or properties. You might hear people use it to discuss their homes as well. So when they use this word, really what they mean is they're keeping the same basic structure. They're not adding on to it. They're not making really big movements and changes, but they're really trying to kind of get the basic things in better condition. You should know that renovate is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, we need to drop the E at the end, and that's because our verb here ends with a vowel, a consonant, and an E. So we drop the E, we add ing, and that makes renovating. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding D because our verb already ends in an E. Now our base verb, renovate, ends in a T sound. This means when I add the ed ending, I'm going to add an extra syllable to the word, and I'm going to make an id sound. So the past tense and participle forms of this verb should sound like this: renovated, renovated. Okay. Now, you might be happy to know there are no phrasal verbs for us to study today, and instead we'll move on and practice making some sentences in some different verb tenses. Today we're going to practice the present progressive and the present perfect progressive. Let's start with the present progressive. Now, many teachers, textbooks, other YouTube videos will call this the present continuous, and that's just fine. Those two things mean exactly the same thing. We use the present progressive to talk about things that are happening now. We also use it to describe actions that are in progress during a time period that has not been completed yet. The reason I like saying present progressive is because the two P's, the P in present, the P in progressive, can help us remember we're going to need two parts to make our verb. So in the present progressive, we use the present form of be and then the ing form of the verb. Now, this means we're going to have to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I'm going to use am, and then that ing form the verb. But if the subject is he, she, or it, I will use is, and then the ing form the verb. Finally, if my subject is you, we, or they, I use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form of the verb. Okay. Let's take a look at an example sentence. Several cruise lines are renovating their ships instead of buying new ones. Okay. I saw this sentence or something very close to it describing the way the large cruise line companies are planning for the future, right? They've decided maybe too expensive to buy brand new ships. We're going to make improvements, maybe things that are kind of old or look bad. We're going to put new things or things that are in better condition in place of those old ones. So this sentence is describing something that is happening now. Now let's move on and talk about making negative present progressive sentences. Our pattern is going to be very close to what it was in the affirmative. So again, we pay attention to what our subject is. We use the correct form of be, then not, and then the ing form the verb. Now you might hear some people use contractions, right? So is not will become isn't, are not can change to aren't. Those things are going to mean exactly the same thing. So let's take a look at an example sentence. They aren't renovating the home after the flood. They're looking for a new house. Okay? So here, someone has made a decision, a group of people or a family, maybe a married couple of some kind here. They've decided, you know what, we're not going to try and fix this. We're just going to find a new house. Now let's move on and talk about making a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, I start with the form of be. Whatever form matches my subject, that subject comes next. And then you're going to see the ing form the verb. Here's my last present progressive example. Is the company renovating its headquarters? So again, making improvements to the building, the office building or the structure. Now let's move on and talk about the present perfect progressive. Again, some teachers' books or other YouTube videos will call this the present perfect continuous. That's just fine. They mean exactly the same thing. When we use the present perfect progressive in communicating with other people, we're telling or communicating that a particular action started in the past is continuing into the present and may even continue into the future. Now, the reason I use present perfect progressive is, again, you can see 3-letter P's. This can help you remember you're going to need 3 parts to your verb. So to make present perfect progressive sentences, we have to pay attention to our subject. If the subject is I, you, we, or they, our pattern is to use have, the participle been, B-E-E-N, and then the ing form the verb. Now, if our subject is he, she, or it, we're going to use has been, and then the ing form the verb. You can see this in my example. She has been renovating the house ever since she bought it 3 years ago. This is something we see quite often with the present perfect progressive, a time period, a length of time. Right? Not specifically 3 years, it could be any length of time. Many times when we're using that present perfect progressive, we're really trying to communicate how long a particular action has been ongoing or has been continuing. Now let's talk about making negative present perfect progressive sentences. Our pattern here, again, requires us to pay attention to our subject. We're going to use either have not been in the ing form, or we're going to use has not been in the ing form. Now, sometimes as people are speaking or writing, they'll make the contraction. So for have not, it's haven't. For has not, it's hasn't. Here's an example sentence. We haven't been renovating the bathroom for very long. So here, someone is trying to stress this process has not been ongoing for that long of a time. Finally, let's talk about making a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive. To do this, we start with have or has. Whatever form matches our subject, that subject comes next. Then you're going to see the participle been, and then you're going to see the ing form the verb. Here's our last example. Have you been renovating anything? Right? If you have, please tell us in the comments section. You can think about ways you might use different verb tenses here. I would love to learn, and that's good practice as well. Now let's move on and talk about a couple related words for our verb renovate. The first word we're going to discuss today is the noun, renovation. This T-I-O-N ending is very common in English, and many times we add it to the end of verbs and we change the verb into a noun. So this becomes the action of. So here, the action of renovating a building. An example of this word in a sentence might be, they made many renovations to the home before they moved in. Right? So here, many improvements, putting things in better condition. This could be a number of different things. So sometimes people put in new flooring. They think the other has been there too long. Maybe it's not in great condition. That would be an example. Another related word you might encounter is renovator. This is a person who renovates. An example of this in a sentence might be, the first time renovator didn't budget properly. I think this is something that happens to many people. They think, I can fix this thing in a particular place. It's only going to take this amount of time and it'll only take this amount of money. And usually it takes more time and more money. The last word we'll talk about today is the adjective renovative. This is describing something that restores something else into a better state or a better condition. An example of this, the train station's footbridge will receive renovative works in 2025. So this sentence is describing work that's going to be done is going to make this footbridge into a better condition. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.